Bon dia, bonjour, buenos dias, good morning, wherever you may be. I'm in Dili, Timor-Leste, on this sunny Sunday, the last session of this great journey, Ubuntu United Nations. During these many weeks, we have had thousands of you, young leaders, as well as the elderly, some former heads of states, some extraordinary individuals who gained the Nobel Peace Prize for their life commitment to the struggle for justice, for human freedom, dignity. You heard some extraordinary colleagues, friends of mine. You heard Kaila Satyarthi, with whom I work closely on child labor and child slavery, because in this 21st century, or any century, the notion of child labor and child slavery should shock the conscience of even the most cold-hearted person. You heard one of the great champions of the fight against poverty, the empowerment of the poorest, particularly of women. My friend, with whom I worked closely for many years, Professor Muhammad Yunus, founder of the Grameen Bank and of the microcredit for the poor. And many more that you will be hearing, my colleague and friend Danilo Turk, president of the Club of Madrid, a former president of Slovenia, UN Assistant Secretary General, candidate as Secretary General to the United Nations, professor of international relations. And he will hear Michelle Bachelet, former president of Chile, High Commissioner for Human Rights, an extraordinary woman who endured torture during the Pinochet dictatorship and has been a courageous voice in the last many years in the promotion and protection of our human rights, in the fight against tyrannies who, with impunity, violate the basic rights of fellow human beings. You heard many more. And we heard many of you with your questions, your comments. So it has been for me an extraordinary journey. And I cannot end without saluting my colleague, co-president John in South Africa, an old battler for against apartheid, for democracy, majority rule in South Africa, someone who worked closely with Nelson Mandela. One of the greatest gifts of God to humanity was Nelson Mandela, and Mandela left for us greatest gift of his message of reconciliation, of building bridges, of human fraternity. So, but we also heard the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. We heard a great man, the President of Portugal, and a great law professor, Marcelo Rebelo de Souza, who enjoys 80% of popular support in his country. And many more. So for me, it has been a tremendous gift. And I thank my friend Rui Marquez, medical doctor, but he decided never to exercise the medical profession and dedicated all his life, he, his wife, his children, even when they were children, they were learning from their father and mother great commitment to humanity, to solidarity, and to the great staff in Lisbon, who have been orchestrating technically everything so that this journey of ours is broadcast and with perfection. So to all of you, tremendous appreciation. But the struggle is not over. The journey is not over. The journey towards the mountaintop from where we would see a world different from the world of today. After centuries of humanity violence on nature, at this time, 21st century, we are facing extraordinary perils, either with uh, backtrack seriously, dramatically in the way we use nature, in the way we abuse nature. Big corporations, pharmaceutical industries, general industries, whether in United States, in Europe, in Brazil, in India, in China. And I refer to the biggest ones who for generations exploited Mother Nature to enrich their own society, their own countries. China and India exploited to catch up with the Europeans and the Americans who had benefited from the previous 100 years of exploiting Mother Nature. We are facing extraordinary perils in climate change. We in Timor-Leste and many small island developing states, we are victims of the voracious appetite of the rich and powerful in exploiting nature. Fish stocks around the world are depleted. Now, people living on the shores of the archipelago where we are, people living even in Europe, on the shores of Europe, who a few years ago they could just sail a few miles and they would catch fish. Today they have to travel thousands of miles away from their own countries into our shores in West Africa, in the Indian Ocean, in the Pacific, to continue to deplete the fish that we need for our own survival. So we have these monumental challenges, and we have the poison dumped into the ocean by pharmaceutical companies, the companies that collect waste, hospital waste in Europe, and they dump into the Indian Ocean. Cruise ships, cargo ships that dump garbage into the ocean. So this is the 21st century. Should have been a century of real enlightenment, enlightenment towards nature, enlightenment towards societies, towards human beings. And we should have by now been able to eliminate child malnutrition, extreme poverty. We should have been able now to bring clean water to every community in the world. We should have been able to eliminate illiteracy, and we should have been able to create around the world health care centers for mothers, for children, babies, so that they grow with good nutrition and grow strong for the future of their own countries and the humanity. We are facing extraordinary perils in the relationship between the superpowers. Increasingly, tensions are visible in Europe. Russia deploying 100,000 troops to the Ukrainian border. NATO has been thinking of Ukraine admission into NATO. Russia has some legitimate concerns in that after the fall of the Soviet Union, NATO expanded towards the borders of Russia. And that's why Russia took over Crimea, because it wouldn't want that strategic port in the Baltic Seas, Black Seas, both would become NATO naval base that directly threaten Russia. Totally understandable, their paranoid, their fears. Of course, the Baltic states, Poland, that were captive of the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union was in existence, have no trust on the intentions of the Russians. And this requires a greater leadership on the part of the United Nations, a greater leadership and vision, wisdom on the part of the President of the United States, Putin, to lessen the tensions and maybe start working towards a neutral Ukraine along the lines of Switzerland, so that Ukraine does not join NATO. Its sovereignty, its integrity is protected by a commitment by Russia, United States, and other countries. That would be the solution rather than joining a military pact that is ostensibly viewed by Moscow as a threat. But Russia also has to understand the fears of its own neighbors. And then we have the tensions between the United States and China. Rather than lessening the tensions, it seems that President Biden is continuing the rhetoric and the sanctions against China. A China that today is a global power. It is dominating intelligence, artificial intelligence. It is dominating all kinds of communication technology. It's no longer the peasant country of the 50s and 60s, the country of the Cultural Revolution, the famine caused by Mao's policies. Today, it is a China that is a superpower, sustained by 1.4 billion people, with extraordinary innovation in computer science, in medicine, in food production, in high tech, becoming the producer of global goods. If you go to the Vatican City, you buy, if you're Catholic, Christian, you buy Christian souvenirs in Vatican City, you look in the back of the souvenirs, they all made in China. So United States and China, President Biden and Xi Jinping should show leadership, intelligence, vision, wisdom to lessen the tensions and become partners in leading our world into a more predictable, peaceful world, working together to eliminate extreme poverty, bring clean water, education, hospital to countries across the world. That would be my hope. And how can you, young people of Ubuntu, the Ubuntu family, contribute? First, you must contribute to consolidate peace in your own communities, in your own countries. Think globally about peace, but act locally to build bridges in the communities, in schools, in your countries. This way, we are putting up the building blocks of peace globally. And that is my message today from this little island of Timor-Leste, somewhere in the Southeast Asia. And luckily that the world is round, not flat, because if it were flat, we would be right at the edge. And any mistake, like on a car, we drive, we fall off the cliff. So luckily that the earth is round. So we are not necessarily on the edge. We might be the center. You might be the center. However you look at where we are in relation to others. But we all connected by us being human beings. And we, to survive, to prosper, we must extend hands to everyone. The more powerful, the richer, be more generous, more compassionate, show genuine solidarity to the countries on the periphery. For those rich families, rich corporations in developing countries, in the third world countries, show your wisdom and the sensitivity and compassion and help in your own countries to lessen the division between the rich and the poor. And the last but not least, How can we in this 21st century still have such a disparity between men and women? We must close the gap. We must work harder for our girls, our grandchildren, our sisters, daughters to enjoy the same opportunities like their brothers. Uh, because do not underestimate the extraordinary power contribution that girls, that women in our societies can make to the progress, to the studies, science, or humanities in our respective countries. Just imagine if besides the boys, all the girls have the same opportunity and devote to study. Our countries would transform dramatically. So to all of you, speaking from Dili, Timor-Leste, I send warmest greetings. For those who are Catholics, Christians, Merry Christmas. For those who different religions, different faiths, great warmest greetings from us, from Timor-Leste, to each and every one of you. I cross over to you through the Mandela Bridge and embrace each and every one of you, no matter your religion, your faith, your ethnicity, wherever you are a son of Mandela, you are a son, daughter of Mandela, you are a son, daughter of God. A big hug, un grande abraço desde Timor-Leste para o mundo.